Hello again, YouTubers. I'm SpongeBob 101 back here again on the SpongeBob channel with another The Patrick Star Show episode review. In this video, we are reviewing episode number 12. Pearl wants to be a star and super sitters. The synopsis states, Pearl stars in a guest appearance on The Patrick Show. Also, Patrick and SpongeBob go back in time to watch Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy when they were new. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Starting off first with Pearl wants to be a star, the episode begins at Mr. Krabs' anchor. This episode is a two-plot style episode. So basically we have Pearl and we have Mr. Krabs here. So both of them are going to go to the Star family residence for different reasons. Pearl to, well, become a star on the show, and Mr. Krabs to play some games with GrandPat. So that's actually pretty interesting that there is a connection between Mr. Krabs and GrandPat, but we do see some background or behind the scenes work that Squidina does for the Patrick Show before Pearl shows up. Of course, she is really excited. Here we have Patrick drinking milk from a giant baby bottle. And then Pearl is basically supposed to come in like the commercial break points for Patrick to change his act, basically. So she's like the filler. And the filler doesn't go very well. So she first tries juggling, and then that totally fails on her. And so we have another segment with Patrick, and this time in a chef outfit. So meanwhile, backstage, Pearl is really upset. Of course, you can see her literally crying into a bucket that Squidina is, well, holding out. And then we flash over to the games, the card game that GrandPat and Mr. Krabs are playing. And there's this really cool part where they flash back to their like army or navy days. So like GrandPat apparently was in the army, and he was telling the story of how he managed to beat all these guys on his own in a very heroic fashion. And Mr. Krabs kind of counters that by saying or telling a story of how he managed to sink 3 enemy ships on his own, literally. Like he literally climbs onto the missile or the torpedo and smashes right into the 3 ships before falling into the water. And GrandPat's like, the only ships you've ever sunk are the rubber ones in your bathtub. Which I thought was really hilarious that Mr. Krabs would be put in such a scene. But anyways, eventually the game concludes with Mr. Krabs actually winning. So he had like 5 admirals, and GrandPat is frustrated. So his recurring line in this episode is one more game and it'll be double or nothing, right? So this continues throughout the episode. Meanwhile, let's go back to the Patrick Show. So just when you thought Patrick was actually doing a cooking segment, no, he was telling the viewers how to like grease the wheels of the boat or something. And look at how tiny that boat is. Well, that didn't stop Patrick from getting into the boat and driving off, literally right off that platform. So very, very cool and silly as well. So this is time for filler, right? So Pearl comes in with her roller skates and totally fails. So then we flash over to another game. I'm not sure what the term of this game actually is, but it's something like wood ball, where basically you have to get the ball to knock all the items into the holes, and whoever knocks those items into the holes gets to keep those items. Well, a new game that GrandPat really came up with. So, of course, double or nothing, and Mr. Krabs manages to hit every single thing on the course into a hole, and that bewilders GrandPat, right? So he failed on his bat once again. Absolutely hilarious. So now we actually see like a drain in the backstage for Pearl's tears that Squidina, and Squidina is riding in that little boat. How cute is that? Oh man, this is amazing. Okay, so we have Basketball Patrick stunt over there, and then finally Pearl comes out for her final act singing a sad song. Well, the sad song doesn't actually turn out to be too sad after all, because everyone loves it. But this is when GrandPat has had enough. He wants to get back at Krabs so bad that he literally puts a piano on a catapult and wants to crush Krabs. How does that make any sense? I do not know, but yeah, so he launches himself up into space along with the piano because he didn't realize that the thing was going to hook onto his foot. And just when the Pearl segment ends with cheers and laughter and hoorays, the piano comes crashing down, destroying everything. So just when Pearl thinks that she's a failure, Squidina's like, no, you just became a star. And unfortunately, it's kind of painful, this scene. Like, look at Patrick's bone sticking out of his head. That's really, really painful. But yeah, so Pearl essentially succeeded in her little quest in this plot, which was very heartening to see. But of course, the other part about GrandPat, I mean, like, what is wrong with GrandPat, man? Alright, so now it's time to introduce our new rating system. The first rating that I'll give is for the plot, and I'll give it a 8 out of 10. Honestly, I think the GrandPat plotline was actually more fun throughout the episode, but of course the ending to the Pearl plot was much better. But anyways, generally a really nice episode to see. Animation, I will give it a 8.5 out of 10. There was a lot of fun stuff going on in this episode. I really like the flashbacks to the Army Navy thing, and of course the various like space, the piano going into space and literally slamming down at them, although that was kind of painful. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10. And then the final point that I want to rate is called unique characteristics. I'm just gonna generally say like or look at something that's really unique about each episode. And I think this episode deserves a 8 out of 10. Because not only did we see the return of Mr. Krabs, but we also saw Mr. Krabs' relationship with GrandPat, right? We saw Pearl's development as a sort of star, a mini star. I mean, she really wants to perform. Nice to see that she has a goal and she actually manages to get to the goal. In terms of uniqueness, I will have to give this an 8 out of 10. And overall, I averaged out the score. It is 8.2 out of 10. Painful ending, but it was a really nice episode. Pearl wants to be a star. So let's move on to Super Sitters. Super Sitters begins with Patrick and SpongeBob, of all people. Yeah, I love it when SpongeBob shows up. They've been watching like a 10-day long marathon of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and they're totally breaking down as sea creatures. And a thought comes to their minds, you know, what would happen if we could see Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy when they were new, right? Like when the show began, or when the show actually happened in real life, right? So Patrick has this hilarious portion of like, you know, thinking. And, you know, since Patrick actually has a time machine, they do go back in time and they encounter this giant dinosaur, which Patrick attacks for some reason and gets a really swollen hand. Ouch. But honestly, I thought this was really funny because of how random Patrick was. He was literally just like plunging into things without even thinking. They encounter this building or this complex here, the Super Child Daycare, a preschool for future superheroes. Very interesting, and they walk in only to be greeted by the manager who thought that they were babysitters. So it kind of reminds me about the previous episode and Patrick was running a babysitting business, but here we are babysitting superhero babies, right? So they go into the nursery and they encounter baby Man Ray, super cute, baby Dirty Bubble, super cute, and of course Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. They begin their super sitting with some calisthenics, and it goes really funny at some point, because Patrick is just dancing in the background there while SpongeBob is actually instructing them in the calisthenics. And there's this part where Man Ray literally like swings Patrick around and throws him into the horizon. That I thought was absolutely hilarious. No, well, the whole calisthenics thing didn't work out. So the next round of sitting involves story time, and I thought this part was so ridiculous. So Patrick is handing out juice boxes. Then he grabs one of the juice boxes, sips everything in it, and then hands that empty juice box to Man Ray. Poor Man Ray, I feel bad for him, you know? So anyways, story time involves SpongeBob whipping out one of his near mint comics, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. But this is not just any comic, right? This is titled The Good Guy League versus the Bad Guy Society. I mean, you can roughly tell what's going to happen here, right? Because we literally have a bunch of babies that are going to be superheroes and a bunch that are going to be supervillains. So, of course, SpongeBob tells a story. We have introduction to all of these characters. So basically in this comic, the bad guys are robbing like a factory or something, and then the good guys are supposed to beat them, right? And then eventually the bad guys lose and get thrown into ice cream jail. So this is a problem because now the good guys, the good babies, think that the other babies are bad guys, so they start fighting. And Patrick has an even more sinister idea. They actually want to roleplay what happens in the comic. I think this is absolutely insane. They're literally manipulating history right here. And yeah, so basically Patrick will lead the bad babies and rob the kitchen, and then SpongeBob and the good babies will save the day, basically. And SpongeBob, or Patrick at least, thinks that this is a really great idea because it's super fun. But of course, it doesn't go very well because when they start fighting, I mean, they have superpowers. And so things really go badly. So eventually the daycare manager comes back only to see a lot of destruction happening. And once he blows his whistle, everyone gets in line. But seriously, Patrick even expects, based on his hand gestures, for payment for their services of babysitting. And I thought this was absolutely hilarious. Like, obviously you're not gonna get anything. You actually ruin the whole thing. They are kicked out. They go back to the present, and in the present they come out from Near Mid comic book store with a whole stack of comics, and they ponder on what actually happened, in the past. And they realize that actually, if it weren't for them, Man Ray, Dirty Bob, all the bad villains wouldn't be fighting the good guys. And this is very true, because even the superheroes and the super villains, they realize that if it was not because of SpongeBob and Patrick, they would not have been spending their entire lives fighting each other. So this is a really hilarious part where they eventually get chased into the sunset, and that ends the episode. Now, just one thing about the superhero thing. I mean, it's actually their choice to actually fight each other. They were kind of introduced to conflict when they were kids, but that doesn't relegate them to always have to fight each other, right? They can just choose not to. I mean, right? But no, so they're blaming it on SpongeBob and Patrick, which I think is kind of weird. In terms of plot, this is a 9.5 episode. Absolutely amazing plot. Of course, Merry Man and Barnacle Boy always spice things up. Animation, 9.5 out of 10. There was a lot of animated sequences here, especially for the fights. A lot of it that I could not show in screenshots, but it's really, really good, and I recommend you watch this episode. Unique characteristics. I give this an episode a 9 out of 10, specifically because we have SpongeBob as well as the whole gang, superheroes, supervillains. So this episode is not like a typical Patrick show, even though the narrator at the end does say it, but it's not like a typical Patrick show because it's as if SpongeBob and Patrick are just having a typical adventure from the main series. And I really enjoyed the episode. Overall, Super Sitters, 9.3 out of 10. That's all for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed the new rating system, and definitely check this episode out if you can. A really great bunch of episodes. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, favorite, comment, etc. Keep right here on SpongeBob 101. And I'll be back soon with more episode review videos. Bye!